Hello and welcome back to my Dandelion Diaries. It is time for the progress report for August. I'm going to be honest, this month I didn't write a whole lot. A lot of my pens are still very full, and that's something that I'm going to have to work with because I usually write them until they're empty, so I'm likely going to continue using most of these into September, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. For now, let's go ahead and get started with the very first pen I had. I'll be ranking these from 1 to 7 like I normally do. This time I'm just going to stick with the basics, number 1 being the best, number 7 being the worst, technically. So the first pen I have here is my Pilot Metropolitan in gold with a medium nib, and it was inked with Sailor Ink Studio 162. This ink combination was pretty good. I gave it a 3 out of 7. I decided that it was a good combination overall. The medium nib showed a lot of the shading in the Sailor ink, but I was a little, hesitant to write with it, I guess, because it didn't give the utter satisfaction that, super smooth writer would be, like if I had put this in a gold Pilot nib or something like that. But overall, I did enjoy it, and I would ink it up again if I so chose. The next pen I had was my Kaweco Sport in Iridescent Pearl, inked with Monteverde's Birthday Cake. This pen ink combination was actually a really good one. I felt like the purple matched really well with the iridescence, but I was a little annoyed with the pocket size this time. I do love the Kaweco Sports. I have 3 of them. It's just when I was writing with this one, I guess because I wanted to use it more often, the pocket size made my hand cramp a little bit more because I'd be writing a lot longer with this color. It was a good combo, but middle of the pack, not my favorite, not my least favorite. The next pen I had was another Pilot Metropolitan, this one in black, and it was inked up with Wearingeul's Human Problem or Human Issue. This one was in a fine nib versus the medium. This combo is definitely my number 1. It was fabulous. I loved writing with it. This ink is stunning. I'm not usually a fan of red inks, and I've talked about this in another video, but this red ink is probably my favorite that I've ever used. It writes, honestly, like blood, which is kind of creepy, but I love the fact that it starts off super bright and then it dries down to almost this like ruddy color, and I really enjoyed writing with this one. It was really just a fun experience. The next pen I had inked up was my Sailor Compass 1911 in transparent olive with a medium fine nib, and it was inked with Pilot Iroshizuku's 𝗖𝘃𝗃𝗄. This ink combination was a little less than par for me. I love the Pilot Iroshizuku inks. I love this specific orange ink, the 𝗖𝘃𝗃𝗄, the sunset. It's gorgeous. But with this Sailor pen, it was a little too scratchy. I've had this problem before with this pen that it needs something super wet in the ink department because it is so dry writing. I figured with the Pilot Iroshizuku I wouldn't have this problem because it's usually a wet ink for me in every other pen. But for some reason, this one, it didn't behave all that well. It still was flowing, like it was a nice experience, but it wasn't as wet as I wanted it to be, considering this is a medium fine nib, and it basically wrote like an extra fine. Overall, not terrible, but I definitely will be putting something wetter in this pen again, probably something like a 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏 or the Monteverde that I've had in it before. The next pen I had inked up was my TWISBI Eco Tea in Jade Rose Gold, and I had 3 Oysters, delicious mustard in this one, and it was a broad nibbed pen. As you can see, it is still very full of ink, and I'll explain why. So with this pen, I gave it my 7 of 7, and it's full of ink because I didn't want to use it. I have a problem with yellow inks. I struggle to see them, and although this color is very beautiful and it is a very legible yellow for me, I couldn't bring myself to write with it all that often. I loved using it for like drawing flowers or making headings with it, but it wasn't my favorite in terms of writing journal pages, and that's okay. It's just I have it full of ink and I'm gonna have to continue to doodle with it or just dispose of the ink inside of it, which I really don't want to do. So something I'm going to have to contemplate, I guess, over the next month to see what I want to use it for, considering it is yellow ink and not something I usually write with on the regular. The next pen I had inked up was another Kaweco Sport, this one in the macchiato colorway, and this one had a broad nib, and it was inked with Ferris Press Oyster Hour, and this was a perfect match for this barrel of this pen. This was my number 2 of 7. I would have made it number 1, except that the Wearingeul was just so perfect. But this one was definitely number 2. The shading on Oyster Hour by Ferris Press is fantastic, and putting it in this broad nib Kaweco just showcased it so well. I think it was a great match in terms of color of pen barrel to color of ink, and honestly would happily re-ink this again. It was just a really fun experience. I did write it almost completely dry. I had to stop using it so that I would have enough ink left to make my progress report, but it is pretty much completely empty at this point. And the last pen that I had inked up was another TWISBI. This one is a TWISBI Eco Rose Gold in white, and this one has a fine nib, and it was inked with Oyster Hour, or no, oh my gosh, Papier, Plume, Oyster Gray. I had too many oysters for this ink exploration, or this, I had too many oysters for this currently inked month. It was fun, but I don't think I'll do this again. I unfortunately didn't write with this pen as much as I probably would have if I didn't have the Sailor Ink Studio 162 in this combination. This ink actually shades very similar. It has almost a blue pinkish like shade to it when it dries down in writing. I thought it was too similar to the green, so I put it at the bottom just because I enjoyed the Pilot Metropolitan a little bit better. I would definitely ink this combination again, but I think with the other colors I had in this group, it just didn't meet the top of the pack. But it is at the bottom simply because all the other ones kind of were just a little bit better. But I would definitely ink this one again. It wasn't that bad of a writing experience. It just matched the other color a little too well. Alright, so that is all I have for the progress report for August. Overall, I'm really happy with my summer at the Bay. I definitely enjoyed the Wearingeul's human issue the most. It was just so much fun to write with, I guess because it was just kind of entertaining to watch the ink dry down. I definitely will give the Oysters, 3 Oysters Delicious Mustard another shot, considering I want to write that pen completely dry. I don't usually like to waste any of the ink. I just think the yellow was just not my favorite. I definitely will draw with it though. It's fun to draw flowers with that, so I definitely will do that again. The Macchiato Kaweco Sport with the Oyster Hour is 100% the best match out of any of the pens I did. I don't usually match ink color to ink barrel, but that one deserved it and it looked so good. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think I ranked them fairly based on what you saw and how they wrote? I think I did okay. I definitely would give the TWISBI Eco with the Papery Plume a better chance, but for now I think I'm settled with how I feel about all of these. If you're interested in any more of the currently inked ink progress reports or ink swatching videos that I have done, I will leave playlists down in the description and then also in the cards. But for now, I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.